You've landed on The Substance, a podcast aiming at being biblical, thoughtful, and human. Join us each week as we engage the culture without the culture war. My name is Trevor Aiken. I am your host, and I am joined by my two esteemed co-hosts, Vincent Edwards.
Howdy, howdy.
And Philip Marinello.
Hey, everybody.
And we have a special episode for you guys today. Joining us for a third episode and kind of a part 2 on our, and really almost a part 3 on our Enneagram series is Jesse Eubanks. Welcome.
What's up, everybody?
Jesse Eubanks is the founder and executive director of Love Thy Neighborhood. He's also the host of the Love Thy Neighborhood podcast, as well as the Enneacast, and he is the author of the Mapping Your Enneagram Story Workbook. Jesse, welcome back.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So guys, we have a really exciting episode today. If you heard part 1 of our Enneagram series here with Jesse, we kind of talked about the different types, but what we've got going on is, as you might know, if you've been a fan of The Substance for a little bit, Vincent has been the Enneagram skeptic, and so it's really given us a really unique opportunity to see what it would look like to introduce him to the Enneagram. Vince, do you want to talk about kind of what you've done and like the work that you prepared? I know you guys are going to talk about it, but just say what the setup was for you.
So like Trevor said, I'm more on the middle / skeptical side of the Enneagram. Check out our original Enneagram episode. And so basically we just got this idea of taking a test that you kind of map out what Enneagram number that you are and not look at the results. And so I'm going to find out what number I am with you guys in real time, and then just kind of go through how we understand that. I did a couple sections of Jesse's workbook just to kind of get prepared for this episode. And so we're gonna go down this road together, and I'm super excited.
So Vince, you took the test and emailed your results to Jesse, and you haven't seen him at this point in time, correct?
Right. It was really hard because they don't make it too, like, you don't have to open up a secure file or anything like that. It's kind of right there. Did my best to try to stay as anonymous as possible. Didn't read up on any Enneagram stuff, and trying to just make it as authentic as possible.
So speaking of that, we really want to hone in on the purity of this convo between Jesse and Vincent. So me and Philip are going to take a back seat for the next little bit and just let you hear as Jesse goes through some of that information and Vince kind of finds out and sees what these things might mean about his character and his life story. And kind of in that way, you can see the journey in the Enneagram and the way it can be used.
So we'll catch you at the end of this episode, everybody.
Yeah.
Jesse, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. So, Vincent, I guess let's start here. What are you hoping to get out of our time together?
I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to put at bay any expectations, because I don't want to necessarily be so skeptical going into it, saying nothing's gonna work and kind of dismiss it. But I also don't want to put myself in a mindset where now I am going to live by the code and rule and doctrine of the Enneagram for the rest of my life. So I'm hoping to stay in a place where if it's useful, if it's truthful, and if it continues to spur me toward Christ, then I'm more than willing to embrace some of those truths. And then if there's anything that is either too much or too far or for whatever reason convicting, then to take that to the Lord in prayer and maybe put that at bay until I feel comfortable about it.
Yeah. Well, let me talk to you a little bit about kind of how I want to approach our time together.
Sure.
So, as you already said, you did the first part of the Mapping Your Enneagram Story Workbook, where you mapped some key memories from your life, and you identified some key memories, and you identified some key emotions associated with those memories as well. The other thing you did is you took a test, what is commonly known as the WEPS, WEPSS, and I have those results in front of me. Now, I could just read you those results, but that's not really how the test works when it's done well. Like, it's not
Mhm.
like a blood count test, where it's like, you have exactly this much of this.
Right.
What this is giving me is it's giving me a snapshot of how you see yourself.
Hmm.
So it's not necessarily going to tell me what is empirically true, but what it is going to tell me, it's going to give me an impression of how you see yourself and how you operate from your perspective.
Sure.
I like to use the analogy, it shows me where to fish. And so it
Mhm.
shows me the areas of your life where I need to really make sure my curiosity is really tuned in and I'm paying attention. So with that, I thought that maybe we could maybe start with a couple of memories that you identified. I was thinking maybe one positive memory
Mhm.
and explain a little bit about what the memory was, why it was so significant, and what the dominant emotion and secondary emotion was.
Sure. So I know one that I shared back in fifth grade. I was going to a charter school and they had a choir at the time. And I had a group of friends and we were all kind of just messing around playing and in the auditorium. And I was dared to audition for a solo part in our Christmas program. And so, you're in fifth grade, you have to honor the dare.
Uh-huh.
And so I went up and I sang and I auditioned for it. And I even remember the teacher's name, Mr.
Hmm.
Brown.
Hmm.
He was like floored. He was like, wow, like you got the part. And that was the first time I was ever like affirmed that I could actually sing.
Hmm.
Because you sing in church all the time in your upbringing and all that good stuff. So that was about at the age of 10. And I would say the primary emotion was joy.
Mm.
And then the secondary was triumph
Mm.
because I was able to one overcome the fear of being dared
Hmm.
and then just being affirmed kind of like by everyone. And
Hmm.
even in the performance, it was such a visceral reaction. I think I was like became popular
Mm.
after. So that was a pretty significant moment, but more than anything, it really stirred the passion for music that I have now.
Yeah. So you still do music now then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really feel like that's a gift that the Lord has given, and that's one that I like to contribute to the local body as best as I can, whether that's playing an instrument or singing. And then obviously in my private life, I love just all kinds of music. That's like the majority of my shout outs on the
Oh,
podcast as
yeah.
well.
Yeah. How does music affect you? There's some people that really kind of connect with music at like a cerebral level. Like, I was having a
Mhm.
conversation with our media assistant, and she was talking to me about time signatures, and she was talking to me about origin of instruments, and she was talking to me about textures.
Mhm.
And she also loves music and it affects her. But like, is it more cerebral or more emotional for you? Like, how does music reach you?
Yeah, I would say it's more on an emotional level as well as just an enjoyment in skill,
Mm.
because it gives me the inspiration of something to aspire to.
Hmm.
Just being able to see people who, especially in the wake of the pandemic, a lot of people have had a lot of time to sit in front of a camera and play a guitar or anything like that. And it's one emotional because if it's a particular song, how the lyrics and that kind of vocalization really just makes me feel, even if I'm not necessarily in that particular situation or
Hmm.
predicament.
Hmm.
It's just like, man, I get it, I do.
Hmm.
But then it's just an appreciation for individuals who can really hone in on their craft and really just make it something that is super enjoyable.
That's cool. That's cool. What about a difficult memory? A negative turn.
Yeah. Man. So at the age of 13, I was had visitation rights with my dad. And so I was visiting him, I believe every other weekend. And it was particularly when I was 13 on Father's Day, and some pretty tumultuous things were happening between my dad and my grandmother, and I just didn't appreciate the kind of exchange that happened, and it really led to me just being like viscerally angry with my dad, and to the point where like we argued after, when he was dropping me off back to my mom, and I said, I don't ever want to see you again, and I was crying so heavily to the point where I couldn't even catch my breath, and that was a time I said to myself, I am going to hate my father,
Yeah.
and I'm going to do that like peaceably, like in a sense, like I'm comfortable with the fact that I might leave this earth hating my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a pretty significantly painful moment, because you in a single family home, you hear stories about your dad,
Yeah.
and so, and they're not always the most encouraging,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not always negative either, but they're usually not a portrait of the best character
Mm-hmm.
of my dad. And so
Yeah,
but
like
I
there's a
didn't really
reason
have.
my parents aren't together for a reason,
Right.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, prior to that, it's not that I didn't believe those stories. It was just more that those things didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
I'm neutral about my dad, not necessarily loving him or hating him. I'm just kind of neutral.
Yeah.
But then when that event happened, it was definitely a turning point where I was like, and I even said in a prayer once, about a week or so after that, I was like, I'm gonna hate my dad, and the only way, I was praying to God at that time, and I was like, the only way I am going to forgive him is if I become a Christian, because at the time I knew that I hadn't given my life to Christ. So that was a pretty significant moment, and I would say the primary emotion there was sadness, and secondary was anguish.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. How are your father and you still estranged now, or did you all eventually reconnect?
Yeah, actually, November of 2016
Uh-huh.
was the breaking point where I had become a Christian in March of 2016, and I was deeply convicted of that riff and that unforgiveness and bitterness that I was holding against my dad.
Uh-huh.
And so that month in 2016, I called him, and I repented to him, and he repented to me, and that was kind of the start of repairing that relationship. And now I can confidently say I love my dad.
That's wonderful.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good ending to that story.
Yeah. And so how old were you when you guys reconnected? So 13 is when you all had your break. How old were you when you
Right.
reconnected?
So 5 years ago, it was 23.
Okay. So 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I connect with that. My when I was 13 was the first time that my dad disappeared. And that was a pattern that repeated throughout a lot of my life. And so I had many years of my life where my dad would be gone and then
Sure.
reappear. And then
Mhm.
yeah, praise God, just this last December, this most recent December, we were able to have a very candid conversation and reconcile after years of
Wow.
not speaking. And so
Man.
so I feel what you're saying, for
Yeah.
sure. I get that. Um, what's the role of anxiety in your life?
Oh man. The role of anxiety, it's fleeting in a sense that it comes and goes.
Okay.
But when it's there, it makes a statement, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. It's very noticeable when I have anxiety, um, but it's not consistently there, and there's not always a stimulus for it.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it just
Yeah.
appears.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think I don't know how much of a significant role it plays,
Hmm.
um, but it's definitely a player
Hmm.
in my life. It's something that definitely occurs.
Do you consider yourself an anxious person?
It really, I feel like it's circumstantial. It depends
Okay.
on what it is.
Okay.
Depends on what it is or where I am in life.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times where I can be pretty chill, relaxed, and then
Mm-hmm.
other times where there's a lot of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Usually that's because something in my life has changed. Um, but again, like I said, there are some times where it's random and
Mm-hmm.
it's I'm anxious and I feel it and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about feelings of guilt or feelings like that you should be doing better. Yeah. And so I'm going to ask you to do something that's hard for theologians
Sure.
to do. Put your theology aside for a second. So I'm not asking for
Oh,
I'm not asking for the Sunday school answer. I'm
I
asking
got you.
for the like you and your wife are having a conversation and you're being real. Like
Sure.
how often do you carry a sense of guilt?
That's a challenge. I would say, um, I guess I could say often.
Yeah.
I would say it's pretty often, particularly because I'm always kind of in this mindset of seeking to repair things
Mm.
or be prepared for
Uh-huh.
things. And so if that falls short, then there's a sense of guilt there. Or I seek to sometimes avoid guilt because I know it'll hit.
Uh-huh.
So I like with work, I seek to be a very good worker.
Uh-huh.
Because if I don't, I'll fall short and then I'll feel super guilty
Mhm.
about it. Or, prior to there was anxiety, and guilt prior to
Mhm.
being married because it's like I want to be a really good husband.
Mm.
Um, so I think in moments like that where there's a challenge ahead, I either feel guilt or I seek to avoid guilt because I know it'll hit
Mhm.
if I don't do, certain actions or have certain behaviors.
Mhm. 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 Um, what about fear? Like, do you find
Mm.
yourself very often worrying about not the moral implications of something, but like the real world fallout? Like if this happens and this could happen and this could happen, like kind of the catastrophic thinking. Like you're worried about, your wife said she was going to be home. She's 10 minutes late. You're going, where's my wife? Do I need to go get in the car and go
Yeah.
find her?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of that. And I tell myself that it's because I'm just concerned. I want to make sure
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody's safe and
And
all
you
that
are.
good stuff.
And you
But
are. Yeah.
yeah, that definitely happens. Fear. I don't know. There's always this backdoor thought, depending on where you are, what you're doing, that
Mhm.
whatever metric that you're being held to, whether implicitly or explicitly,
Uh-huh.
there is potential to fail.
Mhm.
And since that potential is there is a fear to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do or saying what I'm supposed to say, being who I'm supposed to be, in order to make sure that I don't fall short in that regard. So I think, one could point to fear being the motivator
Mhm.
of something like that. Um, and then just this nagging fear, and I don't know so much fear as I would say, but a pressing
Mhm.
concern of death.
Yeah.
Not because it's like I don't. It's one of the few things I don't fear is how I will see
Yeah.
Christ's face.
Yeah.
Um, but it's the mechanics of it.
Mhm.
It's like in order to get to God, I've got to die to do it, and I've
Mhm.
only ever been alive, so I don't know how to do that.
I've never
You know
died
what I
before.
mean?
Yeah.
Right. I've never died before. I
Yeah.
mean, there's the whole theological thing about that, but on a physical, tangible
Right,
level, it's
right.
like I how do you prepare
Mhm.
to do something you've literally never done?
Mhm.
Y And then once it's done, it's like it's done until Christ comes back, you're there, you're in the
Mhm.
ground.
Mhm.
So there's I think I don't know, like I said, I don't know if I would necessarily call that fear, but definitely a concern of the logistics of that.
Mhm. Mhm. Do you feel do you feel most relaxed when you have a pretty good plan put together?
Oh, yeah. and my wife could definitely attest to that. If we can get everything in a row and get it planned out, scheduled, ready to go, then it's like, all right. Now, usually my mind goes to the next plan of the next thing, and I like to think as many steps ahead as we can, just so we can be prepared. I've had my moment where I've lived I would say in poverty, and so in that kind of realm, things are they are predictable in the sense that anything that would happen to a poor person will probably happen. But it's unpredictable because you don't know what level or degree those things are going to happen. So thank the Lord, there's been, blessings and steadiness. But there's often that backdoor fear of like, recessions happen, depressions can happen, and the wealth and the comfort and the benefit that you have could go away. And there are plenty of people who are incredibly qualified currently who have master's degrees, and still, jobless. And I don't have a master's degree. So it's like, I need to make sure that I have everything set. So just in case the worst thing happens, I'm prepared for it.
Yeah. Talk to me about your relationship as best as you can. How comfortable are you identifying and expressing your emotions? Like, I'm really happy and I'm comfortable with it, or I'm really sad and it's fine that everybody knows, or I, feel overwhelmed and I'm gonna, that the freedom to feel the emotion, to identify the emotion, to express the emotion, to what extent do you feel comfortable doing that? And to what extent do you feel like I need to keep a hold on those? Those can get away.
I think it can come down to the environment that I'm in. And I think it's also, at least particularly for me, I am trying to make sure that I have the right words to express emotion. So sometimes, and my wife can attest to that too, I just get silent because I'm still trying to figure out what I even feel. But when I get there, I will definitely explain it. Whereas the only time I think, depending on the level of friendship I have with a friend, or depending on the familiarity that I have with a person, sometimes I'll assess the situation and either keep emotions on bay and just try to keep a good face on to get accomplished what needs to be accomplished, or I will kind of be in my own head. So even though I'm there, I'm listening, I'm kind of in my own head trying to analyze how I'm feeling about it and then seek the most peaceable way to say something about it. Or you've got those few friends that you have that it's just like, I feel like crap. And it's because of XYZ reason if I have those reasons.
Let me ask one other thing. To what extent do you feel like it's on you to have enough resources to be prepared? Like if like you need to be very thoughtful about how you spend your money, about making sure you have everything lined up, like how much energy you give away to things, like how much do you feel that when I'm saying that?
Yeah, pretty and I guess intensely. Again, a person who didn't grow up with a whole bunch of money, and a whole bunch of resources. So now that I have that, there's this looming kind of backdoor idea that I can often dispel theologically, but it still occurs. Is that if God has given you something, He's opened a door, He's given you a good thing, then you be careful because He has the right and the freedom to take that away. And so it's like I have to steward and I have to do well with those things. And then I feel like if I am responsible or if I take responsibility on, then I need to be fully responsible for the things that are mine or that belong to me or that are my responsibility. So long story short is I feel that pretty heavily in most things.
Well, here's what I've done. I have narrowed it down to 3 possibilities.
Okay.
So,
Nice.
Which is kind of what I was going for. So, the good news is that it's only in 2 of the triads. So I
Okay.
don't believe that you are in the heart triad. So I don't
Okay.
believe that your core type, I don't believe that you primarily interpret life through your emotional experience.
Mhm.
Well, I do and I don't. There's a lot of research that says actually that's what all of us do, but for the sake of this
Sure.
conversation, I think that more likely, I think that you feel things bodily, or I think that
Mm.
you are in your mind. I think that those are kind of the two primary spaces that you occupy. The three options that are on the table. Let me describe the three of them to you, and then you can kind of tell me, which of these kind of resonates with you.
Mhm.
So let me start with the one that I think is the least likely candidate, but some of your responses kind of are making me second guess myself. So we'll see.
Okay.
The third likely candidate is type 5, which is the thinker, the
Okay.
investigator. These folks are, as I said earlier, kind of cerebral. They're scholars. They really enjoy
Mhm.
reading and learning and studying and analyzing. Um, they love that. Like that's almost
Mhm.
life. Life is about learning all that there is to learn.
Mhm.
Um, and that could be you, but my gut is you love to learn, but your learning is in service of something else. Like
Mm.
that you love it, but it's not necessarily meeting your deepest need. Like
Mm.
and so and I could be wrong on that. But their desire, the type 5, their desire is to be competent. That's their longing in life. I just really want to be good at something
Sure.
and be very skilled at it. And I heard a little bit of that, when you were even talking about
Mhm.
singing, like, a desire to like, man, I found something I'm really good at.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of their desire. Um and the hidden wound, the message that they heard, whether it was actually said to them or it was just subconscious, it could be distilled down to it's not okay to be comfortable in the world. Get too
Mhm.
comfortable and you're going to get taken advantage of. um,
Gotcha.
and and so their longing is to have somebody tell them that their needs are not a problem.
Mm.
That Listen, your needs are not a problem. God made you needy on purpose, and God's going to respond to those needs.
Mhm.
And not just God, but the people around you that He's sent to be a part of your life. They're going to respond to those
Mhm.
needs. So that's kind of type 5.
Mhm.
Um, the other two that I think are more likely candidates. Um, here's my runner up. Here's number 2
Okay.
is type 6. And
Okay.
type 6 is the loyalist. Type 6 is these folks are very prepared. They forecast, they think ahead, they plan for those circumstances that are coming. They anticipate worst case scenarios and plan for them. So when a worst case scenario happens, they are not surprised. The rest of us are freaking out, and those people are like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I got this. I already planned for this because I knew that it was eventually going to happen anyway." Um,
Mhm.
I've been making notes as you talked, and here's some of the language that you use that is type 6 language. I can't tell you the number of times in the last episode and this one that I heard you use the word skeptical. Skepticism is
Mhm.
a hallmark feature of the 6.
Sure.
They are testers. They're just like, I just, when everybody else is celebrating something, the 6 naturally punches holes in it because they can
Mhm.
see all the weaknesses in the
Mm.
infrastructure. You multiple times use the word be prepared. Use the word anxiety. Use the words fear of death. Use the words plan. You said will probably happen and used it in a negative way. Like eventually the negative
Mhm.
thing's going to happen. It's coming.
Yeah.
You said unexpected. You said unsure. Like all of that is type 6 language. Um,
Mm.
sixes, sixes, their childhood theme was danger and unpredictability. Unpredictable things happen.
Mhm.
And so they experienced a childhood or an adolescence where things could be going one direction, and then suddenly chaos comes home. It could be a mom or a dad showing up. It could be a mom or dad leaving. It could be a mom or dad doing something. It could be not mom or dad. It could be that life in some other way. But home didn't feel very safe for a 6.
Gotcha.
And so the message that they heard was that it's not okay to depend on, to trust or depend on yourself. So they tend to be really riddled with self-doubt. And so they tend to really struggle with, they give their autonomy away. They're looking to other people for assurance. So when somebody else is like, I believe this, and here's all the reasons why, that the 6 is really drawn towards, I want to trust that person. I want to give my allegiance to that person. Even in the description that you wrote to me about mapping your Enneagram story and your synopsis of some of your memories, you talked about to defend and be loyal. Like that was one of the phrases that you used. And you had this sense of like, this good thing has been done for me. How could I not stand up for and defend the people, and God himself that has done this for me? So a lot of loyalty. And the message that the desire that they really want is they want to be secure. I just really want to feel secure. I'm tired of feeling insecure. I don't like the instability that I feel. I don't like the anxiety. That I really want to feel secure, which ultimately is a longing for heaven. And what the message they're longing to hear is, you're safe in my care. I got you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to, everything is going to be okay. And they need to hear that from God, but they also want to hear that from the people around them.
Sure.
So, okay, those are the first 2. Let me give you the last one, and then you can kind of give me your feedback and tell me which one resonates. So my contender for the most likely is type 1. Type 1 is the reformer. So here's some of the words I heard you use. Use the word truth, right, convicted, repented, good, avoid guilt, metric, held to, supposed to, fall short, theologically, steward or else, responsible. Like those are all very moral. You hear the theme, like, can you hear like the theme of moral, like goodness?
For sure.
And so, these folks they care about, righting the wrongs of the world, man. They want to, they see the brokenness and they want God's kingdom come. They want to do something about everything that's broken. But the biggest place they see the brokenness of the world is inside themselves. And it's intolerable. It can be very, very hard for the one to live. They tend to have an inner critic that's pretty harsh with them. Sometimes the voice can be loud. Sometimes it can be quiet. That voice often likes to quote scripture, but it doesn't sound like Jesus. And so it commandeers the words of Jesus, but it speaks like an abuser. But it's done in such a way that the one often doesn't even recognize it. And their childhood theme is conditional love and criticism. They felt very criticized in the world that they lived in, and they felt like, if I don't get this right, the hammer's going to come down on me very hard. So the stakes felt high. The unconscious childhood message they heard was that it's not okay to be wrong or to make mistakes. It's not okay. I expect different. I expect better. You should be better. You shouldn't act that way. You know it. How could you do that? So it's a very, it can be a very punitive culture where there's a lot of consequences for bad choices. The thing that they want is they want to have integrity. It's pretty simple. I want my yes to be yes and my no to be no. And I want who I am in public and who I am in private to be the same person. And then the message that they long to hear is, you are good. You're good. You're good just as you are. Jesus has made you good just as you are. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to go out and jump through the hoops. It's a done deal. Like almost a sense of like they have an inner child inside of them, a little boy. And that little boy just really wants someone to look at him and go, you know what? You're a good kid. And to really just sort of take that down and into the depths of their being. Like, I'm not, the deepest thing about me is not that I am corrupt. The deepest thing about me is that I am loved and that he's made me good. And so those are kind of my 3 pitches? Which one kind of resonates?
Man, I would say all three, but if I had to choose, it's probably a one sprinkled with like a heavy seasoning of
Yeah,
6.
that's kind of what I was thinking too. Yeah.
Because the right and the wrong, especially with a more of a reformed tradition mindset,
Yeah.
it's definitely like you know my sin and what that means to God, who is holy and righteous, and then what those implications are as far as living out the grace and the mercy that you've been given. So I would probably say if I had to put a stamp on it, it's probably an even dose of 1 and 6.
The one would explain something else that I noticed, and there's kind of a discrepancy. So maybe you can help me understand this.
Sure.
So in your memories, you identified the positive theme, the emotional theme in your memories as joy. But on your profile, your 7, which is kind of the area, the part of our personality that's mostly about fun and vivaciousness and adventure and trying new things and being really kind of wild and open and free, that checks your lowest score. And here's what I find. The 1 energy, when it's not healthy, looks at the 7 and says, you are very risky. It looks at the 7 energy and says, if I let myself live in that space, I will sin. I will do something that is dishonoring to God, or that embarrasses me, or that makes other people look at me and not think I'm good. They're going to think that I'm bad. And so it's a common, the non-resourceful side of the 1 kind of bullies on the 7, kind of puts them down. Yeah. Does that resonate at all with you? Like that oddity of that, like joy was such a theme. And I'm not saying you don't experience it, but do you resonate with like you have skepticism about giving yourself over to just having a lot of fun?
Yeah, I would say so. It's probably a very accurate description of the reason why I wouldn't do that. Letting go is just, and we talk about it a lot here on the podcast, is a lot of what we do, a lot of what we say, a lot of how we behave is a witness to Christ.
Yeah.
And so if I let go and just get involved and get in there, it's like, is this the best way that I tell people that Jesus is real and that he's worth surrendering your life to, and that he's trustworthy to put your trust in? So that's often a thought. And so I'm not, I will be honest, and maybe I'm deflecting or something. I don't know. But I don't know if I'm necessarily critical of others who would jump in and do it. It's like, hey, that's your business. That's ain't got nothing to do with me. More than it is just I would put myself at bay to be like, yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
But hey, do your thing, enjoy yourself. And appreciate that, that somebody else, took the opportunity. I jumped off a cliff, with a parachute, and it was great. And I'm like, oh dang, that's dope. The most I would do is like I fly in a tube where it's very constricted, and it's like there are a lot of controls in place. So I at least in this interim, with kind of taking this mental assessment in real time, that's not necessarily something that I feel critical of, more than it's just I abstain from.
Yeah. It's interesting that you even see it as something to abstain from. You know what I'm saying? Like it's interesting to me that there's even a moral component. Like there's a moral risk associated with fun. And
you got me there.
You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
No, I hear you.
Yeah. And I say that to say is like, this is gonna make you laugh. So like folks that are like core 7s, we do like a bunch of work, trying to help them become like more grounded and realistic. But like literally like I always have this laundry list of like, oh, do this and do this and do this, and then we get to the one, and dude, here's my counsel. So let's just say you're going to test drive this one thing for a while and kind of see, does it feel right? Does it fit? Does this really resonate with me? I got 2 assignments for you, man. The first one is you can't read any books about Christian living for like 6 months. You can only read books about God's grace. So if you're going to read,
that's doable.
If you're going to read, it can't be a book that's going to tell you something else you need to go do. It can only be a book that is literally about God's love and delight for you and his grace. Because I already know, dude, you don't need anybody else to tell you what to go do. There's not a book out there that's going to be like, oh, I didn't have that on my list. So that's number one. And then number two is, literally like tonight, go talk to your wife. Like, what do you do to relax, and what do you do for fun? And you may not be able to answer that question real well off the top of your head. Maybe you can, but literally make a list and hang it in your place and keep it around. And then your assignment is go work on just having fun.
Interesting. It is interesting because that's recently come up in a conversation, and I would definitely say that is not something that I know how to do. To relax and just be chill. And I think some of that is probably just needing to work out some, not even necessarily anything moral or like I'm convicted by a sin or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just not being so unfamiliar with it,
Sure.
that the idea of doing it is just like, nah, I'm fine. I'm just gonna go to work, kind of thing. Because it's just kind of ambiguous, too ambiguous to put any shape around. But it's definitely something that I know personally I'm longing for, to just be peaceful. Without, and again, it's not the whole like lacking the spiritual fruit of it, more than it is just being able to just chill, go do something. Because I've even lost my passion for games. I used to play games, like video games and stuff, because that would be the chill thing to do. And then it's like, I gotta critically think all day at work, and then to critically think of where I'm supposed to do on this game is just gonna stress me out. So I definitely can resonate with that.
So I think, man, my encouragement is this, is I would say test drive this for a while, 6 months or a year. Just kind of go like, do a little reading around the type 1 and the Enneagram books that are out there, listen to some podcasts. But then as part of that, I just want to encourage you, like, I love ones. Ones are like almost always my favorite interview that we do on the Enneacast. I really resonate with ones. I've got a lot of one myself. I just love, like, especially in a time that like everything is morally ambiguous, like I really appreciate that ones are like, there's truth and there's lies. And like in this last year where this new wave of civil rights has kind of reached a new peak, like I really appreciate that ones have been a force for that, like saying, hey, there are some things going on in society we really need to address. So there's just good stuff there. My hope for you is, over this next year, that maybe it could be a space where it's like, hey, I just want to experience the joy of the Lord, the joy that God has for me. And part of that means I can be kind of kid-like. I can goof off and be silly and, be like a child. So that's kind of my assignment, man. My encouragement is read a bunch of books about grace and go have fun.
Boom.
What do you think?
I got it written down. Hey, I'm not gonna lie. The first one's probably gonna be mad easy to do. The second one is where the challenge is gonna come in. But hey, it's one of those things where it's actually a recent kind of revelation of mine about God's grace, because I caught myself worrying a lot, especially now that I'm having some transition periods in my life. Moving to another city and, going to another job and all that kind of stuff. And came back to my mind, like, I'm worried, but God's grace is what saved me, and it wasn't my works. And so if my works don't save me, my works aren't the thing that keep me saved.
That's right.
It's still God's grace.
Yeah, that's right.
And even there was a time where Trevor and I were just chilling at his place a few months ago, and we were listening to KB. Shout out to KB. And I'm trying to remember the name of the song. It's called Masterpiece. And it was just talking about how God made you a masterpiece. And it was like, man, I noticed in the Reformed tradition, especially if it's Calvinistic, you almost become skeptical of anybody, even a Christian, who says, God is love or God loves you, because immediately the assessment of that is it's a worldly love.
Right,
it's not one that takes in consideration what 1 Corinthians 13 says. It's more of just this ambiguous, fluid kind of whatever kind of love. And so I was like, man, so to compensate for that, we talk a lot about the wrath of God and the sin of man. And it's a good thing, don't get me wrong, because that's needed in some circles. But I was just telling Trevor, it's like, this is nice. It's nice to be able to hear for a change that God loves you. Because John 3:16, for God so loved the world. If he just judged the world, then he wouldn't have sent his son. But he loved the world, and that's why he did. So I'm very appreciative of your time and coming on, and I'm a little less skeptical now. But at the same time, I think the Lord was doing some work on there on the front end already. And if nothing else, this is just a confirmation of I think what God is getting started in this next kind of chapter of my life. So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we talked. Thanks for being vulnerable. I really do appreciate that.
I appreciate you, man.
Yeah. All right, fellas, you can rejoin the party.
Bro.
That was great.
Yeah, love that, man.
And surprising a little bit for us.
Man, some really interesting insights. One, when you asked him about a plan, and I think about all the episodes where we're like rolling into recording sometimes, and it's like, yeah, we've got some ideas. Well, it was a long day. Like we'll get some, and he's like, what is going on?
Because I've sketched out a couple of things. Here's what we're gonna do. He goes, Phil, what is it? And
I'm like we have to be right. No, that's so funny.
That's on me. I'll take that to the head.
No, they need that, man. They need to get their act together.
We need it.
Amateur hour. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's super good. No, I think it makes it that's really interesting. One of the things is, so like, whenever you're hanging out with your friends, you're always trying to figure out, what's their type, right? And so like we had thought, maybe we see some Force stuff in there, that kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of the stuff with the one that really makes sense with that. And there's a stress, the stress, like you already explored the growth arrow and kind of the resistance between 1 and 7. And I think, the stress arrow to 4. And you were talking about, Jesse, your growth arrow is to 1, right? So like there's a relationship there in some of those things. And so one thing I was wondering about is like, Vince, would you say that you are in touch with like, yes, I know what I want? Or when you approach different situations in life, it's kind of like, I'm not too sure what I want. What do people want me to want? What do you identify more with?
I think I feel like it's circumstantial. I find myself in both places, but if I had to choose, like, where do I lean more? I would say for the most part, I know what I want, but it depends on who the audience is, how free I feel to communicate those wants.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's just like, if I say this as raw and as visceral as I want to, then I'm going to offend somebody possibly. So there's either a diplomatic way to say it or a way to not say it at all. And either put those ones aside or get those ones in a different way.
Yeah. It's something that I've found to be a distinguisher between some like 6s and 1s I know in my life. It seems like some 1s are a little bit more in touch with this is what I want.
Yeah,
Whereas six kind of related to other
sixes
people.
tend to be more, if you ask what they want, it's like, well, what's been tested? What are other people doing? That's kind of their question. Like, what are other people doing? Ones are a little more like, what do you want? And they're like, I can declare, like, I kind of know what I want, but I'm not sure it's right. Like, and so I need to pause and think about it. And I might even defer to others, but it's a little bit because I'm not sure if it's the right best thing. And so the trajectory is a little different.
They feel like they know what they should want, but if you take the should out of there, then they just end up with what is the me underneath that wants these things.
Yeah. Good stuff. Like Jesse said, thanks, Vince, for putting yourself out there. We appreciate it, and I'm sure our listeners appreciate kind of getting to hear that process in real time.
Yeah, that's my hope, is that especially for those who are in the middle, and we say this a lot, but truly for those who are in the middle, because I am that guy, there is mystery, and you're kind of only knowing what you're being told by others. And so to be able to hear it in real time, see that broken down, see it's not very scary and it's not very displaced from Christ. There is a means in which the Enneagram could possibly be beneficial. And so my encouragement to any listener, especially that are on the fence, is just don't necessarily scratch it off, and keep yourself in prayer, and maybe even move forward.
Yeah.
And if you don't find it useful, do something else.
Yeah, I love the language that Jesse used around test drive. Walk in it, see if it makes sense. When I first typed, I think I was typing as a 5. And we walked in that for a little bit. And I think one of the turning points was actually something Jesse mentioned on the last episode around just these stories that you relate to. And as a 9, and my wife was like, Trev, that is you to a T. And I'm like, you're right. And it was singing my song. So yeah, I think you walk in it, you test it out, because it's kind of just the beginning of a journey. And then if it fits, go with it. And if it doesn't fit, then go with something different. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Jesse. That's awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you again, Vince, for opening up, doing the work, and just being vulnerable for the listeners as well.
Awesome.
It's good to be with you guys, and I always enjoy sitting down with people and having these conversations. And my ultimate hope is not to make Enneagram enthusiasts. My hope is that people will encounter Jesus and come to know him better, and better understand the specific ways that he loves each of us. It's not one size fits all. He loves us each in unique ways that each of us very much needs. And so, so if you walked away from this episode going, I don't know, I'm not all that excited about the Enneagram, that's fine. But I hope you're excited about Jesus.
Yeah, man.
We're definitely keeping that in.
That's
good.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you and thank you for that passion. That is what it's about. It's not about platforms. It's not about influence. It's not about any of this other stuff that
intellectual systems.
Yeah, and even like just building up a successful ministry or anything like that. Sure. It's really about pointing people to Jesus.
Yeah.
Get more of Jesus. That's what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you for the time, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Appreciate you, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And I'll give you a follow-up for sure in the next 3 to 6 months here.
Yeah, that's right. Make an appointment on your way out. We'll see you in about 6 months.
All right, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. At some point, we'll do it again.
All right.
Awesome.
Cool.
Sounds
Love
good.
it.
All right, peace. See
Have
ya.
a great night.
Thanks.
We'll see ya. So normally we'd say, hey, that was Jesse Eubanks, but in this case, it was kind of
that was Vincent Edwards.
That was Vincent. Vince, how you feeling, man?
Feeling good, man. It's a lot to process. So yeah, I feel definitely it's a mixed set of emotions, but one where it's just gonna take some time to parcel out and kind of just think through. So I'm excited for the assignment. Like I said earlier, I think God was doing some work on that department already. And so if nothing else, this is just, like I said, a confirmation of an area in which God wants me to get to.
That's awesome, man.
Dude, that was so exciting. Like that was very much not what I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And I found that very stimulating.
I think that's what's so exciting about it is like we have people in boxes that we think we understand folks, but like when we really ask them the questions and go through it and hear them explain themselves, you really see people in a different light. And I think that's true here. Like we've been friends for a while, like you said, we've known each other, but like, we learn new things about you, we hear new things about you, and like just to understand you in that way, like that will be useful. And I think that's something that we kind of coming out of this is what we wanted to do, is kind of just as a team be more vulnerable and open to each other in those ways as well. So
Sure.
Anyway, awesome stuff. Listeners, thanks for coming on this journey with us. Check out the Enneacast. I mean, 2 different ways that you can listen to that podcast. You can listen to it kind of just straight through, and you'll get a longitudinal look of all the different types. But if you have a core type that you're wanting to jump into, they've got 3 seasons, and you could listen to like the intro episodes and then just specifically go in deep and listen to like 4 episodes on one type, and they really do build on each other. They've done an excellent job structuring that podcast, as they do in all of their structures. So check out their stuff.
It's a really well like structured resource for people who know their types and want to have a good resource that is biblically saturated.
Yeah. And hopefully you're finding our show a great resource as well. Thanks for coming back.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And if you want to, if you like what we do, if you enjoyed that, if you found that interesting and you want to support us and help us to grow and provide more of these resources, you can partner with us by signing up to be a monthly Substance supporter at our Anchor link in the show notes there. We are working in 2021 on a campaign to get $25 a month supporters. We're looking at various things we want to do, and we figure if we can just baseline, the first tier goal is get to that $100 a month, and whatever amount you can sign up, but we would love to get that core $25 a month supporters. But if monthly support isn't your thing, you can also hit us up on the Cash App at $TheSubstancePod if you want to give a one-time, like, hey, that was really cool. Like, I appreciated Vince opening up himself. Like, I wanna give back and show my gratitude. We are at $TheSubstancePod.
And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Substance Pod. As always, there you can join us in the conversation. Comment on anything that you heard. The intent was for you guys to be able to see the interworkings of how the Enneagram works. So if you had any thoughts or just anything that hit your mind that you thought was worth sharing, either hit us up in the comments section or create your own post and tag us in it. Also, we have giveaways there and our shout outs or the shout outs of our guests. So if you heard something either in the past or in Jesse's shout outs in our last episode, and you want to know more about that, we will be putting that on our socials. So interact with us on social media.
Absolutely. If you want to write us or leave us a message, there's 2 ways you can do that. Our email is thesubstancepod@gmail.com, and you can write us there, or we have a phone line at 913-703-3883 where you can leave a brief audio message. We'll be able to hear your voice. It's a great place for testimonials, ideas, reactions, how the show has impacted you or your thinking, or just ideas that you had as you were listening through. And if we really like those, we could put them on the show. So hit us back with your feedback.
And we haven't said this in a while. We don't say this every episode, but if you really like the show and you're following us on the socials, you're not quite sure if you want to be a monthly supporter, or if you are a monthly supporter and you haven't hit that 5-star button and written a couple of sentences, one of the most helpful ways podcasts can find new listeners is when people write what they like about it. So if you like The Substance, please consider writing a review and letting others know what you like about it.
Definitely. Well, once again, we thank you for joining us for this episode, and we will see you next time
on The Substance.
Peace.
Good work, everybody. Dude.
Jesse Eubanks is the founder and executive director of Love Thy Neighborhood and the host of the Love Thy Neighborhood podcast and the Enneagram. Enneagram. Wow. It's,
yeah, 420. Enneagram. That'd be a really hipster Enneacast episode. Podcast.
Yeah, we just smoke a lot of weed and just talk about things.
Yeah, legalize. Let me hit that again. All right.